Welcome back to the Victory Degree Podcast. Today's guest, Daniel Carcillo. Daniel, welcome to the show, my man.
Thanks, buddy.
So, Daniel, you are a couple of things. One of them, you are from Ontario. You are a former NHL player, a two-time Stanley Cup champion, and now you are a concussion advocate, and you're going down your journey of health and the healing powers of psychedelics and spreading awareness about that. Given your resume and given everything that you've experienced in your life, if a stranger were to stop you on the street and ask, who are you? Who is Daniel Carcillo? What would your answer be?
Who is Daniel Carcillo? I mean, I often think about this from a more of like a spirituality context because I do feel that, I have obviously many reputations, millions of them with individuals that I've never ever met before. And some people know me as, an enforcer. Some people know me as somebody who's a concussion advocate, somebody who is an emerging medicine, psychedelic medicine advocate, somebody that obviously cares a lot about, you know, making sure that people have access to information when it comes to concussion advocacy and education. I'm a father of 4. I am a husband. I'm a son. I'm a brother. Got 2 bros. And, I don't know if that adequately describes who I am because I'm still trying to figure it out, just like everybody else, and continuing to evolve and trying to get better in all aspects of my life, business and friendships and my family life, and obviously my advocacy. Those 4 things are the most important to me, and even more important to me than those things is good health, so ensuring that constantly in the best shape that I can be, both physically, mentally, and spiritually is it's the best way I can describe who I am.
So, Daniel, if you don't mind, I think we're going to try and unpack who you are through this episode. And I think a good way to do that is to take everyone back to Kingston, Ontario. Having been born in Vancouver, I am somewhat familiar with Canadian geography. But for those who might not know where Kingston is or where Ontario is even, can you describe for us what growing up in Kingston, Ontario was like?
Yeah, for sure. So actually, Kingston, and you're not the first person to get it confused, but so I'm from King City, which is right before Kingston.
Okay.
Doug Gilmour is actually from Kingston. I believe the Tragically Hip are from there, but I'm not 100% sure. Don't quote me. So King City is just a small farming town, about, I'd say, like an hour and a half, south of Barrie. Hour and 20 minutes north of Toronto. When I grew up, there's like 13,000 people, and everything really revolved around the rink and the community, and it was just cool. I mean, it was a close knit community. Nobody locked their doors, that whole type of thing, and everybody, everybody was always trying to help each other. Everybody knew each other's names, etc. There's 2 main streets, 1 bar, 1 grocery store, that type of deal. It's grown since, but a lot of land, a lot of farms, and the school there's 1 school, and so everything was pretty small. I personally always thought, I don't know, outside of the box in a sense, or bigger, and always wondered kind of what was outside of the city, or in the city. Luckily, my grandparents lived there, so we traveled to Toronto often, and we traveled a lot for hockey. There's a lot of traveling that happens in Canada, and got to see a lot of really great things. Got to see a lot of really cool countries growing up playing the game, and I was always just really drawn to hockey, and the fact that you can play this game with different rules. You're able to hit somebody. It's a nice anger management tool. It was, I was really drawn to the teamwork aspect of it, and also, if you were good at it, people wanted to watch, and people cheered you on. And I have the middle child complex of wanting to, be seen and heard. So yeah.
Was hockey something that you took seriously from the start, or was it just a hobby that eventually turned into a career? Like at what point were you like, all right, maybe I do have a real shot of doing something with this sport?
I was never a kid that thought I'm going to make the NHL. Like there were a lot of kids around me that thought that way and their parents thought that way. I actually played double A my whole life until cuz we had two brothers and there's just triple A was just way too much travel for my parents and they couldn't handle, they couldn't afford it. And so we played double A for the Humberview Huskies. And I was always kind of the best player in the league and on my team. And I could have gone triple A, but I didn't until I think I was 14, turning 15. And I went and tried out for the junior Canadians. Anthony Stewart was on that team, Jeff Platt, Luke Chiquino, Brent Burns. Like there were a lot of really good hockey players on that team, and I made the team. I tried out against 26 other kids in one practice, and they ended up picking me. And that's kind of when I really made a decision, like a conscious decision to say, because then scouts are coming to your game, obviously with watching Anthony, who was Bobby Orr's agent, who's a prodigy, and I started to really want something more from the game and from myself. Up until that point, I was just really drawn and to this thing that had different rules and this the fact that I could test somebody else's will to compete and to play. I was really drawn to. And so and then I started to obviously think about well, it wasn't necessarily making it to the NHL, but it was making an independent life for yourself, and so the idea of moving away from home and at 16 and possibly getting drafted to the NHL and that idea of being wanted and acquiring skills and out competing other kids and then not only in your own country but worldwide, that was really cool. So that's really when I started to think and breathe and really live hockey.
Talk to me about the decision of moving away from home at the age of 16. That is seemingly a decision most 16-year-olds are not faced with, but you were. And so what was your thought process when making that decision?
Yeah, I didn't really have one, to be honest. I didn't know what was in store, but I was kind of excited. Like, and my parents are actually here, but my mom would tell you, like, she was super strict, on us. And I was like, man, I couldn't wait to kind of get out of the house, spread my wings and be on my own. And, but it wasn't easy. Like, I went, even moving just to Sarnia at 16, going to a new high school, having to, everybody's kind of, you had to get new friends. You left everything that you knew. And it was an adjustment, but it didn't, all the hockey guys hung out with each other. And so, at least you had a small group of people, and it was a sacrifice that you make. I don't think it gets too often talked about how big of a sacrifice that is, how you give up, your younger years. And we were traveling on buses, 8, 10, 12, 16-hour trips, sleeping on floors. And it was, it was a nice learning experience. And it really tests, your might, or I guess your will to want it. And so, that was all kind of offset though with the hockey, right? As soon as you got out of school, you were at the rink, you were doing something that not a lot of kids were doing. And you were getting scouted by former NHL players, and you were playing essentially against the best kids in the world, right? From 16 to 21. That was the league to be in. So it was an adjustment to leave, but it was also, then eventually I got drafted, I think it was 72nd or 73rd overall in the world. And I went back to my high school, and I was drafted to the NHL walking the halls of my high school. So that was kind of a trip. And then, as soon as I graduated high school, I made the decision to turn pro. And before that decision, like, there was a decision to either go to university or to go to the OHL, because the OHL didn't necessarily provide a decent school package. So I went to schools like RPI, which is a technology school, and Cornell, and Bowling Green, and a few others. And I just, I remember my dad wanting me to go to university, which was kind of weird. And then my mom wanted me to go to take a swing at it. And I agreed with her, right? If it's like, if you're going to do it. Like, why go to university for 2 years and then you're 2 years behind everybody else getting into the NHL or into pro, into the AHL? So, chose the path that I chose and ended up working out.
You were quoted saying on a different podcast that you didn't feel any pressure despite leaving home at the age of 16 and despite having these aspirations to go into the NHL, and yet you didn't feel any pressure. But to me, it seems like you were going all in on this NHL thing, and if it didn't work out, I guess we'll figure it out. So for many, that seems pretty daunting, but yet you, again, didn't feel any pressure. So why didn't you feel pressure? And did you ever consider an option B, or was it just NHL or nothing?
No, I mean, I negotiated a pretty good school package for the OHL. If the NHL didn't work out, if you don't turn pro, you can capitalize on your package. And if I didn't turn pro, which I didn't think was like, that thought didn't even cross my mind, then I would have went to Western and I would have became a lawyer or something like that. I still would have had a good life. But yeah, I don't know. It's an interesting thing to talk about because even now I'm an entrepreneur, right? I'm a businessman and I didn't go to business school. I just kind of figure it out, and I put the work in. And really, everybody has a lot of great ideas, but what matters is how you execute. It's execution. And I learned that in hockey, right? And if you put your mind to something, anybody listening, and to you too, Nick, like, you can do anything that you want. You really can. You can acquire a new skill in a very short amount of time. And, we have this beautiful thing called the internet. Now we have this beautiful thing called AI. And it's like, you don't need university. You don't need some degree to make you realize your dreams. And I have different dreams now and I'm achieving them. So, with hockey, and with spirituality, because I am spiritual in the sense that, I manifest and I visualize what I want. I sit down and then I build myself up to attract the things that I want in my life. And, and it's a beautiful thing when you're kind of, Wayne Dyer calls it living in your music, which is there's a lot of effort, like just before this call, like I went and cooked dinner for my family. Before that, I was on back-to-back calls till about 6 o'clock. And right before this call, I had a call at 6:45, 15 minutes to figure out this kind of lease offer that we're offering for Oregon. And so you're kind of, most people would be super stressed thinking about the things and looking at my day. But for whatever reason, I'm not. And I'm just well prepared and well built, I guess, to handle it. And I also have a very clear vision. And my vision isn't 3 months from now. It's not 6 months from now. It's not even a year from now. I have a very clear 5-year vision of where I want to be. And I'm just taking these steps that are necessary to get there, and I don't view it as stress. I just view it as work. Like, and some of it sucks. Most of it sucks. I wouldn't wish business on my worst enemy, but with the hockey journey, I was just like, I just loved it, man. And I knew that I loved it more than others. I could tell just by looking at a guy's eyes that I could make him fucking quit. I don't know if we could swear, but I could just tell.
Go ahead.
So, yeah. So, yeah, I hope that makes sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I want to, before we get back to your NHL career, I want to stick on this topic of visualizing success. And I want to stick on it because I had Dan Jansen on the podcast. So Dan was a former Olympic speed skater, won gold in 1994, tragically lost his sister right before one of his races, thought he would never race again, persevered, came through, and eventually won gold, fulfilling his life's dream of winning gold at the Olympics. And so his journey was very inspirational to me. But one of the things that he talked about was this whole thing of visualizing success that you just brought up. And he mentioned that a lot of people go wrong because they visualize the end goal. So in terms of they visualize what they want to happen, let's say 5 years from now. But in reality, what they should be doing is visualizing all the hard work that's going to have to go into it, all of the nights where you're doubting yourself and you're thinking, am I doing the right thing? Why am I doing this? Is it worth it? And trying to push yourself through those barriers instead of, again, visualizing the end goal. So I'm curious, thoughts on his perspective.
Yeah, I mean, I think he's bang on when so I do believe in having a dream or having some sort of you need something to attain, at least in my life, right? That I need to know. For example, right now, I my goal is to eventually have 25 to 50 of these psilocybin service centers that are now being legalized across the United States. First in Oregon, and then in Colorado, and then in the 21 other states that are working on legislation. That's a goal. Now, in between here and 5 to 10 years, there is so much work that kind of goes into it. But the goal is that it's because I saved my own life with mushrooms. And I've watched over the last 5 years, I've watched veterans and first responders and people take this medicine and then get better and just completely transform their lives, completely give them a new perspective on their illness and themselves and their relationships and their family structure, et cetera, and friendships. So I think that he's right. And for whatever reason, he was a speed skater and he was a speed skater and he liked
Correct. Yep.
that. I was a hockey player and I liked it. So if you are passionate about something, and some of the best, I'll correlate this to investing. Some of the best investors, like I asked investors why they invested in me, and they said, number one, you're articulate. Number two, you had a vision. And number three, you're passionate because it saved your life. Like, these investors don't necessarily invest in good ideas. They invest in people that are invested in the mission. And I said, well, why do you do that? They said, because nobody in their right mind would start out building a business. Like, it's so hard to be successful. Nobody in their right mind would start out thinking that they want to be in professional sports, because I guarantee you, man, you get a month in to this type of training and you're in the summer and you have to train like you're in the NHL, but you're not necessarily on the ice, and you can't even walk when you get home, and you got to buy ice from, this is before these cold tubs all we're here, but you got to buy like 6 bags of ice and take it home, and your parents are looking at you like you got 4 heads, and you're filling up a bathtub and you're getting in it you're just trying to, you give up the rest of your day. Like, you're not doing anything. You got PT, you got Cairo, you got the guys are going golfing and drinking and all that stuff, and you're like, well, I can't walk, because, and then I have to be able to do it again tomorrow. It's just really hard, and so I don't think that you ever kind of grow up. Like, I think it chooses you. You know what I mean? And then I think over time, like as a kid, because as a kid, you don't think about how hard it is, right? It's fun. It's a game. But once you get to a certain level, you make this decision or this switch to be like, well, now it's a business, and I have to treat my body like a business, and I have to be completely ready because I'm getting paid a lot of money to show up and do my job. And if I can't do that, well, guess what? I'm not going to have a job. And so, I mean, as far as the visualization and the meditation and the work that needs to go into it, I definitely think that you need to have a dream or have some sort of end goal. And then I also think what's important is training with people. And I also think that, when you do go through these hard times, because everybody does, you have to then switch into a different mode, which is, well, why am I doing this in the first place? And usually when you're at that kind of level that Dan was at or that I was at, you can't fucking quit, man. There's no way to quit because you're so deep into it, and there's so many people that are relying on you. So those things really help, kind of propel you in the darkest of times. And we want to win, man. We all like winning, right? Like I got, you can see one Stanley Cup here. I got 2 Stanley Cups here, like 2 world championships that nobody can ever take away from me. My name's on the cup forever. My kids are 9, 6, 5, and 10 months. When she's older, like, all her friends they're all saying, well, I know what your dad does. My youngest daughter, her 2 teeth fell out, and they're like, well, you look exactly like your dad does on YouTube, like that type of stuff, right? And so now they're always associated with a champion, and people like being around winners, and they always ask these types of questions, right? So I've always had a little bit of a complex, as you can hear, about people wanting to know more, or people just accomplishing stuff, that people are interested in.
You talked about fans of the NHL not realizing how hard NHL players work. And you alluded to some of that with the examples of the training and, the countless, ice treatments and not being able to walk. As an NHL fan myself, I clearly do not understand how difficult it is and how much you had to train. So, talking directly to me, give me an appreciation for how difficult the NHL truly is, and maybe even like a day in the life during the season, and kind of just what that grind looks like.
Yeah, of course. So a day in the life. Let's start with like 5 days, weekdays. Usually we're playing, so over an 82 game schedule, I think it's around 160 or so days. We're playing every third to second day. We're playing a game. And then we're traveling pretty much every other day. So, there's practice, obviously. There was a lot less practice towards the end of my career, but, call it on a Monday and you're getting prepared for a Wednesday game. Say it's an out of town game. So you practice Monday morning, 9 a.m. You're back out of practice after about an hour and a half. You come to the rink very early. You warm up. Some guys work out pre, and some guys work out post as well. There's always a workout post, especially if it's 2 days before the game. And then there's your recovery and everything else. You get home around, call it 2-3 o'clock, and then you've got your kind of free time. Following the next day before a game, super important. Practice, which is usually a little lighter, but that day before was a hard practice. Like the coach is putting you through drills and 5-on-5, and because we're 48 hours out. Day before a game, you show up, same thing, 9 a.m., usually a workout before, or a stretch activation, and then there's the practice, which is usually a little lighter because you're playing the next day, and then there's another workout, always a workout. And then right after that, there's lunch at the rink. So around 12:30, you get off the ice, you do your stretch, blah, 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 cold tubs, recovery, IV, whatever you need. Then there's lunch. You eat lunch at the rink, and then there's a schedule where you're pretty much between the end of practice and workout, you've got about 90 minutes to recover, eat, and then get your ass in your car and go to the flight, because this is an out-of-town game. So we fly, or we drive all individually. Sometimes most times, guys will say, let's partner up, and I'll drive this time, you drive next time. Get to Signature Airport. We check in, we do our, we fly private, go through the screening, get on the plane, fly, get there, bus immediately from the plane to the hotel. Put your stuff in your room, get changed, pick your spot for dinner with the boys. Usually there's groups, and then go to dinner, eat dinner, get home, rest, usually in bed by 7:30 before a game. And then you wake up the next morning, it's game day. You have a morning skate early, kind of just get a good sweat. There's the stretch, obviously, before the activation. Some guys do a light workout afterwards just to get certain things, get the kinks out if they felt something on the ice. Get back home to the hotel. There's usually an early bus and a late bus. Some guys have a different routine. They want to be at the rink early, etc. Get back to the hotel, eat, and you're usually in bed by 12 o'clock. So there's always a nap. Guys always take naps. Some guys don't, but it's very rare. 2.5 to 2 hour nap. Wake up, depending on when you want to get to the rink. There's 2 or 3 buses. Go downstairs for a snack. Then, get to the rink, hop on your bus, get to the rink. Sticks, usually guys are there 4, sometimes 5 hours before a game, sometimes 3, minimum 3.5, I believe it was. Do your sticks, get your stuff. If you're playing, start activating at a certain time. Make sure your skates are all dialed, everything's dialed. And then, get ready to play an NHL game. And then usually after an NHL game, which is taxing enough, and you're usually burning between 4,000 to 6,000 calories, and you're beat up, etc. Then you have, a workout after the game. If you're not playing, you're working out during the game with all the rest of the guys trying to stay in shape. You play. There's a workout after, and then then we eat. Usually something very small at the rink, and then everyone hops on the bus together. We go to the plane because guess what? We're either traveling back home or we're traveling to another city to play the next night and do that whole game day routine again. or we go home, practice day, same run of show, unless we've been on the road for a while and there's a day off. And then you play again. And you can pretty much rinse and repeat that whole schedule for 180 or so days, however long the season is. And that's not including playoffs. And depending on where you're playing, the travel schedule will get shittier as you go out west. And yeah, man, welcome to, a sneak peek into maybe 72 hours of what you got to do to stay in the NHL. And the reason there's workouts is because the games are so hard and the practices are so hard that you're deteriorating your body. So you have to keep building your body back up in real time throughout the season, so that you don't, because you're dropping 6, 7, 8 pounds of water weight and muscle mass. So yeah. And then that doesn't include the summer. I could tell you about the summer too, where you're doing 3 or 4 hour workouts in a warehouse with no air conditioning and stuff, so that you can sweat stuff out and stay light, because you're building muscle and you don't want to be too heavy when you get into the season. So yeah, it's not for the faint of heart, for sure.
Yeah, I'm exhausted just hearing you explain it. I feel like I went through a workout.
Yeah, a mental workout. Yeah.
Yeah. At any point during the season, does it ever? I'm sure you've hit many walls throughout your career. I mean, I guess at what point in the season would you hit a wall, and then what helped you push through it?
Yeah, I mean, as soon as you get to training camp, you're deteriorating your body immediately, and usually mid-season, first half of the season is like easy-ish, I would say. But guys are kind of coming out of the gate, coming out of the summer, so they're not going as hard. But usually mid-season, there's the All-Star break, so you get a little bit of a break, and you get a little bit of a reset. But after All-Star break, it's pedal to the metal for sure for a playoff push. And by that time, really, the playoffs is already kind of figured out in a way. It's hard to kind of claw back. But there's little injuries that happen all the time: practice, workouts, tweaking, dehydration, games. And it's really just about learning a formula for yourself. You don't know this when you're young, right? But when you get older, you kind of know your body. You know exactly how good you feel at what weight, and you know your workouts, and you know which muscles to activate and which muscles to loosen up before games. And you know your morning routine, your afternoon routine, you know your lunch. Like, not a lot changes. And it's just this repetitive discipline, this act of knowing your body and your mind, and how it performs and how it reacts to certain things. And you usually don't change too much up. So it's really a habitual act of dealing with pain, griping with everybody else because everybody's in pain. There's 23 other guys. It just sucks most of the time. But then there's sometimes it's beautiful, right? There's times where when you get to the playoffs in a good position and you win each series, and guys are bleeding with teeth lost and stitches, and you're all going through it. It's like, that's the shit, man. I mean, that's why guys struggle so hard after their career, because it's like, how the hell is real life ever? How are you going to replicate something like that? You can't. And it's different in business. Like, I've had some successes and some losses and stuff. And like, I have a couple businesses right now that I'm really proud of to be a part of, but it's so different. It's so different because it's not physical, and if people in business fuck you over, well, it's not like you can grab them and just beat the wheels off them, right? You want to, but you can't, right? Those are the different rules. So yeah, and there's parts of me that miss it for sure, but there's also parts of me that, because it made me so sick and I almost lost my life, this next phase is really exciting because in hindsight, hockey's given me everything, right? It's given me everything from a sense of a platform to these skill sets that I use in business, to also making me sick, to then I got healthy with the skill sets that I used. And then now I'm helping other people, get healthy from something that there's really no cure for, or at least that's what medical professionals tell you, right? As far as concussions and depression and these sorts of things. So it's it's a cool little full circle kind of life so far.
I definitely want to get to your life after hockey and some of the things that you were mentioning with the companies that you have and some of the work that you're doing now. in the concussion space, in the CTE space, and just being an overall advocate for how deadly, unfortunately, in some cases, CTE really can be, and traumatic, brain injuries can be. But before we get to that, and I think this will, tie in with some of the work that you're doing now, you had a little bit of a reputation in the league as an enforcer, and you would be willing to drop the gloves and go at guys and beat the crap out of them. I think your nickname is Car Bomb, in part because of your play style on the ice. You said in a separate interview that between the years of 19 and 25, you were angry and you weren't a good person. I'm curious how much of that, I guess, bled into your play style on the ice, and kind of where this stigma came from, and how you became, kind of an enforcer, and let's just say it, more of an aggressive player on the ice.
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. It actually came from the hazing and abuse that we had to endure as a rookie when I was getting drafted to the NHL my first year away from home in Sarnia. There's a pretty commonly known ritual that rookies have to go through as far as abuse and hazing in junior hockey. And I didn't know it at the time, but that really propelled me. I already kind of liked hitting people, but I didn't like hurting people. And that old saying, hurt people, hurt people. And so I kind of used that anger and frustration and, to be blunt, like sadness, to go out and add something to my repertoire, which was fighting, which was, and then also like, I don't know, something switched in me where I really enjoyed the fact that I could beat somebody up. And I really enjoyed the fact that it made them even more scared than it did before, because I would always be able to fly around the ice. I was always a good skater and hit people. But I also was conscious of the fact that I had to move up in age levels. So now I go from 16 to 21 and I'm playing against 45-year-olds, 40-year-olds that have families and stuff. And so I knew innately, like, I can't be 165 pounds. So I put on 30 pounds of weight that summer before I turned pro. And I added something to my resume, which was fighting. And, there's no coincidences in this life. And so I started to knock people out pretty quickly. And I got this reputation that, hey, man, this guy can fight, and we had a lot of fighters on our team. And so, that just I kind of became known for it. Guys were coming at me, and it was kind of nice because it helped me get into the NHL maybe a little faster than I would have with just scoring goals and getting assists, etc. And then I think it really helped me stay in the NHL, right? Where it was like I was really good at it, but I could also play. So I was unique in the sense that I wasn't a heavyweight that just got out there and dropped their gloves at the beginning of the first faceoff just because I wanted to fight somebody. I would earn the fight, or I would make somebody earn the fight against me. And I was also very unpredictable, but I could change the momentum of a hit of a game with a hit or a fight, and I knew exactly when to do it. So it's a skill set that not a lot of people talk about and that not a lot of fans know. They just see it as fighting, and it's a part of the game. It's always been a part of the game, and I always believe it should be a part of the game. I believe in informed consent, that the NHL and these medical professionals should admit a link between repetitive head trauma and concussion and then educate the guys about it. That's what I believe in. I don't believe in removing hitting or fighting from the game, because it's such a big part of the game. And so, moving through 19 to 25, I was, just taking names and making a name for myself, and, hurting a lot of people legally and illegally. But, that's why I was, who I was, right? That's why teams liked me, because I was unpredictable and other guys knew that. And I was really tough, and other guys knew that. Other guys knew I'd stick my chin out and take a punch to give a punch. Not a lot of guys do that. They fight, but they fight with their chin back just because they have to for a paycheck. I wasn't like that. I was like, I was in it, and yeah, I mean, it's something that I was drawn to. It's something because of my past trauma. And it's something that I started to reconcile with around 25, and I was going hard on and off the ice. I had a few surgeries. I got into, opiates, overprescribed opiates, and had to ask for help, which was the best thing that ever could have happened to me because it saved my life at 25. I cleaned everything up, and then I started to get into these things like visualization and meditation and breath work and hyperbaric chamber and float tanks and acupuncture and reading to calm down, like just these things that are such an anomaly to hockey players. And then my last 5 years in the league, 25 to 30, I went to 4 Stanley Cup finals with 3 different teams, all in a row. And I was a really good teammate. I was much healthier, and I was much more successful, and I was getting hurt less. So, I describe that as living the right way. Your luck is a sure thing. If you're doing the right things, good things are going to happen. This goes back to that whole other, almost like giving up control, but still having a lot of effort. But then these good things are coming into your life. That's the whole adage of manifesting what you want, right? Like people think that they get what they deserve in this life, but you get who you are. Meaning the more spiritually, mentally, and physically fit you are, and the way that you think is going to attract this frequency that you're at is going to attract the same frequency. If you're negative, and you're always griping about what's wrong, and you're never grateful for what you have, you're going to continue to attract people, places, and things that are not desirable for your growth. And so I saw that in my career, but I didn't see it right away. You know what I mean? But I know that now, like for sure. And it's easier said than done because I still got lost right after my career. I was really sick, had a few friends that passed away, got stuck in this anger, this victimhood mindset, and I couldn't really break out of it. And what helped me break out of it were these medicines, that are helping a lot of people neurologically and with physiological or psychiatric disorders. So, I hope hope that makes sense.
No, absolutely. And let's get into it. So, recently, Chris Simon, former hockey player, passed away. It was discovered that he had CTE. And like you mentioned, you had some friends who also passed away. And it seemingly, even through your own experience and going through, and maybe you can, help the audience understand some of the symptoms that you were having post NHL, post your NHL career. There seems to be a definitive link between playing hockey and CTE. Other leagues have admitted it, namely, the NFL, even soccer. I think you brought up in a different podcast, I think even women's gymnastics has admitted that, there's a link between gymnastics and CTE. Why is the NHL so late in admitting that there does exist a link between playing the game of hockey and CTE developing?
Yeah, I think they've taken this stance and they don't want to move off of it. And they're just invested in it. They've settled lawsuits for $24,000 a guy, which doesn't do anything for anybody. It'll be back in the news this year. Steve Monador goes to trial. His case goes to trial in Chicago, which I'm an expert witness for. Blackhawks cleared him for 4 concussions in 12 weeks. It was his 16th, 17th, 18th, and 19th concussion in less than 12 weeks. And really, I think those were the hits that really killed him. And they're taking the stance of big tobacco, right? Which is like, the science isn't there, although the science is. And, we're all complex individuals, right? So like lawyers are really good at arguing that, it could be the cigarettes that caused it, or it could be the hits that he had in junior. The NHL hits didn't cause it. Like there's just so many arguments, and it's hard to pin down anything really that we all take. I mean, we've got 12 billion neurons up there. So, they're smart, and but being smart and then just doing the right thing are two different things. And so we'll see what happens, and we'll just continue to advocate. It's an opportunity for people like me to educate, create awareness around these deaths. Unfortunately, more guys are going to die. They just will. and more guys will have CTE. I have CTE on my brain, like undoubtedly, for sure. Am I going to die from it? I don't think so. If I continue to exercise and prioritize my health and use these medicines, which are potent neuro anti-inflammatories, and give me, better access to my brain, I've completely reversed it. Take it a step further. I'm cured, and I'm a well person now, right? So I use this medicine to get just more creative, better cognitive processing, better access to language, memory, things of that nature. So there's definitely a cure for traumatic brain injury symptoms and CTE. And I was being told I had mild dementia by doctors that was intractable, incurable. That's a lie. And if anybody else there is listening, you can go on my social media feeds. It's why I do what I do. I haven't been doing this for 5 days or for Concussion Awareness Month, or I've been doing it for 9 years. I've been well for 5 of those 9 years, and I'll continue to show it. And if you want a little bit of what I have, which is kind of what I heard from my sponsor when I first saw an AA room, like, how do you pick a sponsor? It's like, well, if you like what somebody says or has, then go and get it and ask him how he did it. And right after this, I have a free webinar for people, and I show people how to get it. But newsflash, it's work, man. Nothing comes easy, and nothing worth having ever does. So yeah, I just can't put my mind and my spirit there too much, because I know this league makes people sick, and I'm over here I'm creating solutions, right? The big business, the corporations, they'll always be feeding us the bad stuff, and so I just I want to go down a more positive road.
Daniel, in addition to the natural remedies that you use and that you advocate for, there are 3 pillars that you list on your website to help with recovery. And those 3 pillars are discipline, positive mindset, and then self-care and lifestyle. I was hoping you could maybe spend 30 seconds to a minute on each one of those topics and kind of what they mean to you.
Yeah, I mean, we've talked a lot about discipline already, right? Which is having, one of the main things about discipline is ensuring that if you're going to make a contract with yourself, you keep it. So, for example, this morning, I made a contract with a buddy that we were going to go work out, and I held it. I made sure that he held it as well. So that's the whole goal with this community that I'm building with this webinar and the crew, right? It's like we can all share information freely and hold each other accountable to make good choices, to make better choices. And it's easier to make better choices when you're in this kind of community being upheld by individuals, whether it's the guilt or the shame that you don't want to deal with. Like, those are good emotions to get out of bed and do the thing that you told yourself you were going to do. And, like, self-care is really important because, you need supplementation, you need a routine, you need these avenues to be able to, I call it being like selfish, and you need to be extremely selfish with yourself and with your recovery, because if you're not, then you'll lose everything else, right? And that's how I feel I feel very passionately that if and my wife knows this, and she calls me the most selfish individual on the planet, and I agree with her, because if I'm not, then, well, guess what? She gets a shitty husband. She gets I'm not fully there, and all women want is for somebody to be fully present, and I need to be fully present for my kids. And so, when I say that I need to go to the gym, I need to go to the gym every day. I need to sweat. If I don't, look out, like, I'm going to be a little bit edgy. I just know that, right? So I prioritize. I try my best to prioritize it in the morning when my kids aren't up and stuff, but sometimes it doesn't work out that way, right? Like, we went to vacation on the spring break, and so I made sure I was up at 6 a.m. every day. I was back in the room by 7 when everybody gets up, and then we all went to breakfast together and those types of things. So prioritizing self-care is important. And then, positive mindset is just that's probably the hardest thing to do, is to live in this space of being grateful for what you have, as opposed to looking at the guy in the Ferrari and mother effing yourself that you don't have a better job or a higher paying job and that you just want that thing, um, a positive mindset, it's a tool. And again, it's the same thing as discipline, because it's a disciplined mindset that if you always have this outlook of like, damn, like, look how great my life is, look at how lucky I am, then you're on this different frequency, and you will continue to get things in your life that will amaze you. And if you're always griping about what you don't have, well, guess what you're not going to get? You're not going to get an introduction to somebody that can give you a better job, or an introduction to somebody that can tell you, how to get the thing that you want, right? Or a break in life. People talk about these miracles. These miracles don't happen to people by accident. They happen to people that deserve them, So yeah, all three of those things combined, working towards again some sort of vision that you have, and it can be simple. It doesn't have to be grandiose. All of those things will help attract the right things in your life, for sure.
Daniel, it's been a joy getting to know you a bit better. I highly suggest, obviously, all your social media links, your link to your website will be in the description of this episode. But just in doing preparation for this episode with you and doing more research on who you are and listening to interviews that you've done, it's clear, like you alluded to earlier in this podcast, that you're a man on a mission, and your journey is one that should inspire many. And having seen and read through what you've everything that you've been through and seeing where you are today, it's certainly inspiration to me. So I, for one, thank you for sharing your story, and helping spread awareness on some of these core issues that not a lot of people want to discuss, but they are there and they are prevalent. So thank you for sharing your journey. I think it's like I said, it's one of inspiration, and you've definitely inspired me. So thanks.
Beauty, man. Yeah, let me know when let me know when you share this episode, and I'll help push it out on my socials. And thanks for having me, man. Those are great questions.
Really quick, there's one last thing we have to do. So we have a little tradition here on the Victory Degree podcast. So on every episode, I ask my guest to leave a piece of advice for the next guest. But the catch is that you don't know who the next guest is going to be. So our previous guest on this show was Andy Holloway. Andy is he's a co-host of the Fantasy Footballers podcast. So #1 fantasy football podcast in the world. They're consistently near the top of sports podcasts. I've been listening to them since 2016. It's kind of a full circle moment. I feel like I grew up with them, and then I ended up interviewing Andy, which was kind of crazy. But his advice for you was relentlessly pursue the elimination of hurry in your life. For some reason, hurry is associated with productivity, and it's not. So really quick, what does that advice mean to you? And then what is the piece of advice you'd like to leave for our next guest?
Yeah, so hurry is an interesting word. I mean, I associate that with anxiety, or like busy work. Some people think that they're working so hard because they're doing 18 things, but they're not in the present moment when they're doing the things, right? They're doing the thing, and then they're off thinking about the next thing, so they're not fully engaged. I see it a lot on Zooms, in a lot of and I'm guilty of it too sometimes, right? Where I'm like sending emails while I'm talking. So yeah, just slow down. So I guess, building off of that, I mean, my advice to the next person would be do everything in your power to stay in the present moment, whether that's a supplementation routine or whether that's exercise and whether that's a health routine. The only time that we are fully engaged in life is in the present moment, whether that be with our kids, this conversation, or in business. So I would encourage the next guest to, implement practices that allow them to be in the present moment and make the best decisions possible and enjoy life. That's anxiety and depression doesn't live in the present moment. This is everything.
And enjoy the Florida sun.
Yeah, buddy. Oh yeah, can't miss it, dude. I know, man.
Daniel, this has
How
been
good is it? How
awesome.
good is it to be outside? Like just
Eh,
fucking walk in Florida all year
Right.
round, sun. Oh man,
Yeah.
it's the best.
It's the best. Daniel, this has been
Cool.
amazing. I know you have to run. You can find Daniel on all social media, his website, all that good stuff will be linked in the description. Daniel, thanks again, man. This has been awesome, and best of luck on your journey, and I'm sure we'll keep in touch.
Thanks, buddy. See you, Nick.